We're here. It's time. We made it.
The worst of the worst.
What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. You've seen my best movies, the one that I feel strongest about from 2021. I'll link that below. But now it's time to talk about my least favorites, the ones that just didn't work for me. I watched them and I said, oh boy. As always, I shouldn't have to say this, but I want to state that this is my subjective list. These are the movies that didn't work for me, but just because they didn't work for me, doesn't mean they couldn't work for other people. So if you liked one of these films or you enjoyed them, it's absolutely okay. Tell me why down below. And this isn't meant to be a slight against the filmmakers or anything for these movies. These are just the films that did everything I didn't want them to do, or they just didn't work. I also want to state this, because I have to do it every year. I saw almost 300 movies this year, original films from 2021. So on most lists, you're going to see the Tom and Jerry's and Space Jams of the world. And I don't like the movies on that caliber, right? I went deeper into the pits of the streaming world. So when I see big blockbusters on people's lists, I'm like, yeah, those movies didn't work, but at least you didn't watch this film, because not a lot of people watched this film. What are those films? We're going to talk about it on this channel. Let's talk about some honorable mentions, aka some films that you'll recognize that didn't quite make my bottom 10, but they were close. Movies like Bliss, starring Owen Wilson. Wow. A Matrix Wannabe did not work for me at all. The Lockdown on HBO Max, talking about the pandemic with Anne Hathaway, Chiwetel Ejiofor. Not good. I wasn't a big fan of the Cinderella movie on Amazon Prime. It didn't work for me. I didn't like the idea that they were doing songs that we've heard countless times, but not in a way that was interesting. A movie by the name of Infinite, starring Mark Wahlberg. Hey, everybody, it's Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, that movie was infinitely boring, unfortunately. And then, a film that I never in a million years imagined would be on a worst list, but this is a Studio Ghibli movie, Earwig and the Witch. This is unfortunately an animated film that I thought went nowhere. Great concept, but poor execution. I could also include a movie like Snake Eyes, which was it was a blockbuster that didn't really do anything new or bring anything new to the table. Another one, Tom and Jerry, made all the mistakes that the early 2000s movies that try to include CGI animated characters make. Demonic, directed by Neil Blomkamp, who I like, but this film just made all of the mistakes that I was hoping it wouldn't. A film by the name of Intrusion on Netflix. This was so cliche, and I predicted almost every single story beat. And finally, a film that came very close to making this list, Thunder Force, starring Melissa McCarthy and Octavia Spencer. Ben Falcone's direction just doesn't normally work for me, and this is a movie that isn't very funny, and it's going for funny, so when those two things come together, it's not good. Let's get into the bottom 10. All right, so I'm going to have to paint some pictures of these films, because you may have never heard of them, but this is actually a recent one on Netflix called 2, and a lot of people agreed with me on this movie that this just did not work for what it was going for. Have you ever seen the movie The Human Centipede? It's a very different film, but there's a similar concept in there. So, two people, a man and a woman, wake up naked with their abdomens attached to each other. Not only is this, well, I guess it's an interesting concept, right? But not only is this a poorly executed movie, but I wasn't a big fan of the performances. And the entirety of the film is based around these two performances, because you're with them almost the entire time. Now, everything happening outside of the room was interesting for me, but when we're focused on these two attached to each other, trying to learn who each person is and, get that backstory, the way the movie presents that to us is awkward, but you're with them for like 80-90% of the movie. And that's really unfortunate, because it didn't give me anything to latch onto and attach myself to, because they're attached. Yeah, don't watch this. I won't spend too much time on this one, because frankly, I don't remember it. It's another movie on Netflix by the name of Carnival. And here's your description, right? After a breakup, an influencer takes her friends on a free trip to this vibrant carnival, where she learns that life is not just about social media likes. It is kind of exactly what you anticipate from that premise. It's a lot of, getting people to like your content, and why aren't people liking my content, and, the way that these people act that we're following throughout this movie is at times like my worst nightmare. They're just so conceited and full of themselves, and they try to give you a story and give it to us at an angle that makes them likable by the end, but I was so just not into this film at the beginning, it would have taken so much more than it actually gave me to get me hooked. And the movie's progression, I do like the carnival setting, kind of like the atmosphere of the location, but when you give us a movie all about people that are just so full of themselves and trying their best to do anything it takes to get the likes, and something happens at the beginning when our character gets cheated on, and just the way that it spreads around, and I'm not into this movie. If you see Carnival on Netflix, go get up and go to an actual carnival, because it will definitely be more fun. I love carnivals. What am I talking about? Let's go. The Misfits. They're not the bad guys. They just steal from them. Pierce Brosnan and Nick Cannon. Look, I just rewatched Drumline this year. I love that movie. So I've enjoyed Nick Cannon before on the big screen. Clearly, Pierce Brosnan is a beast. I love him. So I was actually going into this movie, even though it was a VOD release, on demand, not coming to theaters. Okay, I was going into this movie with semi-decent expectations. So here's your premise. After being recruited by a group of unconventional thieves, renowned criminal Richard Pace finds himself caught up in an elaborate gold heist that promises to have far-reaching implications on his life and the lives of others. So with this film, Nick Cannon, we get a lot of voiceovers from his character, bringing in Pierce Brosnan's what you think is like an established, gonna be good at his job type of character, but really, the movie never showcases that or gives us anything interesting with the characters. Now, the heists themselves, they are fine to watch. We've seen it countless times, but they were okay. But it was more so the construction of this movie. Like I said, a voiceover all throughout. They try to give us this relationship between Brosnan's character and his daughter that goes absolutely nowhere. And I found myself rolling my eyes so many times throughout this film because it just never gave me anything to latch onto. It was never interesting. And unfortunately, I found it to be a waste of time. When you're watching so many movies, and it is your job to watch movies, sometimes you watch them and it feels like a job. This time, it felt like a job. Next up, Home Sweet Home Alone. Archie Yates, who I really like, and even in this film, that did not serve his character whatsoever. The kid who's home alone in Home Alone is not the focus of the story. Why? And you have Archie Yates, so much charisma. Why not utilize him? There's about 20 minutes of this movie I would look at some of my younger cousins and say, yes, they would enjoy that part of the film. But the rest of the movie, like an hour and 10, 20 minutes, is absolutely pointless for that age group. And then you look at the adults. Why do we care about the characters that are breaking into this poor kid's house? That's the backstory that we get. That's who they're trying to get us to care about. And they just weren't very likable. I enjoy Ellie Kemper. I like Rob Delaney. And making Timothy Simmons Rob Delaney's brother in this movie is a genius move. So why wasn't it funny? Why do we continue to get these scenes, whether it be slow motion or when they're popping up all of their faces and they mask them in with I don't know. I didn't like this movie at all. Nothing about it appealed to me other than Archie Yates' performance, which is just completely looked past. The humor wasn't funny, and I think kids, they'll get about 15 to 20 minutes of joy, and the rest of the time they'll be bored to tears. I kind of hate putting The Kissing Booth 3 on this list. I didn't hate the first one. I didn't like the first one. But the reason I don't want to put this on this list is because it's hilarious. It's so funny. Unintentionally, of course. Man, there is a scene in this movie that I even wanted to make a separate video on. Regarding Mario Kart, where they all dress up like the characters from Mario, and they get in go-karts, and they're racing. And the extras on set that are sitting in the crowd and reacting to this scene, making the faces and freaking out, and oh my gosh, and so into it instead of what they would actually be doing, being on their phones or recording it and putting it all over TikTok because of the stupidity that's happening in front of them. Man, that is one of the best scenes of the year. It truly is. It's hilarious. Now, in terms of the actual story, I was honestly kind of into it after the first film. I like Joey King quite a bit, and her character of Elle, the relationship with Noah, where it goes, and you're trying to figure out, okay, who's she going to go with? How's this all going to turn out? Then you get the flash forward 5 years later at the end of the movie. If you're not into Kissing Booth, you don't care what I'm talking about. You can go to the next choice. But I was looking forward to seeing the resolve of this. But instead of giving us some emotional beats that would have allowed the audience to care, they do all of this dumb stuff. And they give us a bunch of montages and just things that make me think that they didn't really have an idea for this third film. It's unfortunate because I like these actors. And again, I was hoping this movie would cap off the trilogy in a good way, kind of like To All the Boys. But it didn't. Music, directed by Sia. Starring Maddie Ziegler, who I actually really like, and she's not bad in this movie. She's genuinely good in this film. She's also in West Side Story and To All the Boys, and a film called The Fallout that you guys haven't seen yet. I saw it at a film festival. It's great, and she gives an awesome performance. But her script and everything she was given and the intent of the film and what the film is trying to do, everything about it is off. And I've seen so many people that got offended from this movie. And I honestly, I see it, and I don't blame them. It's one of those movies that tries its best to convey something and just doesn't work at all. You look at the premise, right? Zoo, a free spirit estranged from her family, suddenly finds herself the sole guardian of her half-sister, Music, a teenager on the autism spectrum, whose whole world order has been beautifully crafted by her late grandmother. And that aspect of the story is beautiful. The film soon challenges whether it is Zoo or Music who has a better view of the world. And that love, trust, and being able to be there for each other is everything. Leslie Odom Jr. and Kate Hudson are in this movie. And again, you know, you look at the conceptual aspect of this movie and you can see why they signed on, but then you start getting into the script and what it does and how it portrays certain things. And then the filmmaking itself, there are some really nice set pieces, I guess, in this movie, but they also feel so awkward and off compared to what the rest of the film is giving us. It's just a poorly directed and written film. I see why people got upset with it. So Music, Golden Globe nominated Music, is on this list. Bruce Willis. He was in about 35 movies this year, but no one saw them because they were all on demand. I don't blame him. He's taking a check, all right? He's got to pay for stuff too. But you look at what this movie is, a combination of so many films we've seen before. And poor Frank Grillo. Why is Frank Grillo in this movie? He, at this point in his career, should not be doing things like this. Here's the premise. In the year 2524, holy cow, that's a long time from now, 4 centuries after humans started colonizing the outer planets, retired General James Ford gets called back into service when a hostile alien fleet attacks soldiers on a remote planet. The threat against mankind soon escalates into an interstellar war as Ford and a team of elite soldiers try to stop the imminent attack before it's too late. I'm going to talk like this because in my last video I talked like this and someone said, "Austin, you always talk like that. I hate your videos." And I said, "When do I ever talk like this? Why are you still here?" What movie are we talking about? Go watch the trailer and tell me why this is on my list. I don't even need to describe it. It's why... What's next? Deadly Illusions. This is the kind of movie that we used to perceive Netflix constantly putting out. Now, obviously, they still put them out, but Netflix has had some phenomenal films this year, and I've been more than happy to give glowing reviews to some of their original movies. This is not one of them. Here's the premise. A best-selling female novelist suffering from writer's block hires an innocent young woman to watch over her twin children. As the novelist dangerously indulges in her bestseller, the line between the life she's writing and the one she's living becomes blurred. Jealousy and rage, all of these emotions coming into her mind because she sees this young woman and what she's doing. Is she doing it? Is she not doing it? We're kind of in her head, but are we actually? It becomes this kind of this narrative that pushes her into doing things that aren't great nor entertaining. And this film features some of the worst dialogue I've seen all year. Just the interactions and the way that you don't feel any connection to any of the characters. And then things that they don't explore. That was my biggest issue with Deadly Illusions. It's like they show us, but they're never giving us things that we truly could have connected with to care about these characters. And the performances, while fine, I think Kristen Davis gives a fine performance. For the most part, they didn't work. And then there are twists and turns that also didn't work. He's All That, starring Tanner Buchanan, which I hate doing this because I just watched Cobra Kai, and I love Cobra Kai, and he's great in Cobra Kai, and Addison Rae, who is from TikTok. Now, I wasn't very familiar with Addison Rae, so I didn't really know her work leading up to this, and wasn't sure if she would be terrible in this movie or not. And she wasn't terrible. And really, there aren't too many awful actors in this movie. They're fine. I mean, she's not great, but they're fine. For me, it's the movie. It's the idea of remaking She's All That, what a lot of people consider to be a classic. And for me, it's fine. This one's way worse. But it's one of those films that just does everything wrong. Everything that movie did that had some charm to it, or the dialogue between the characters, or the moments that stand out in people's minds, this movie doesn't do, and it does the opposite. Not only does it do the opposite, but it gives us these really awkward and horrible dance scenes at the end of the movie that feel so misplaced, and there's no reason for them to be there other than the fact that Addison Rae, I guess, does dances on TikTok, but even she didn't look like she wanted to be there in those moments. It's not the kind of film that executes what it's trying to do at all, right? It's trying to be charming and quirky and silly, but even the character turns, Madison Pettis, her character, it just didn't really feel natural to me. Nothing about this movie feels natural. Even the chemistry between our two leads, and they're charming, I guess, in their own way, but when they come together, I never really felt that. It felt rushed. It felt written in a way that never brought out anything from these characters that we imagined. I thought maybe this movie could bring it together and surprise me. Unfortunately, it didn't, and it didn't really do anything right beyond one or two decent performances. All right, here we go. Directed by Coke Daniels. This is called Karen. A racist woman makes it her personal mission to displace the new black family that has just moved in next door to her, but they won't back down without a fight. Taryn Manning as Karen. This is one of those movies you watch and you're trying to figure out, is this intentionally funny? It's not. Or is it just really, really poorly written? And as the movie went on, you get these semi-solid performances from our couple that moves into this neighborhood. And Karen, because the name's Karen, they even acknowledge that in the movie, which I guess is good. Not really. They are kind of wondering why she's acting the way she's acting. Standing on the street watching them, turning her cameras towards their house, constantly coming over and making these really snarky and rude remarks. And then I believe at one point, I think it's her daughter or her son, comes over and says, yeah, my mom hates you. So everything is escalating to a point to where it feels like it's trying to be a horror movie. But instead of giving us something that could have sent a message, and obviously they wouldn't name her Karen at that point, but been something along the lines, and they're trying, I guess, to give some sort of idea that they've watched Get Out, and this is an attempt at that, but it falls so flat, and it's so poorly executed, and it takes everything that the message should be, and it just destroys it with horrible writing and horrible performances. I thought some of the people involved with the movie were trying. But when you have a script like this, and you have a film that should have been a drastically different tone, turning this into a silly horror movie, but not the kind of horror movie that I guess could have worked, the kind that, like Freddy, Jason, it turns her into a slasher, and the music playing underneath her saying all of these lines, it makes it funny, and it shouldn't be funny. This is a hard movie to describe because I never imagined this kind of movie would exist. I saw the trailer, and I said to myself, oh boy. And then while watching the movie, I said to myself, oh boy. And Karen is not good. Not only is it not good, it's the worst movie I've seen this year. Again, that doesn't mean it has to be the worst one you've seen this year. If you feel differently, obviously these are always controversial lists because it's like, where's Black Widow? And I'm like, come on, guys. Here's Black Widow, and then here's Karen. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Come on. With that being said, what is the worst movie you've seen this year? If you only saw a handful, and trust me, be thankful for that, okay? Then your list is going to look a lot different than mine. But I just wanted to be honest with you guys and tell you what my list would be. But this isn't it, right? We've had best of the year, worst of the year, but I've watched a lot of television shows. I believe over 70 TV shows this year. So we're going to do my best TV series and Netflix series of the year that's coming to the channel very soon. And, of course, my most anticipated of 2022. If you guys want to drop your thumbs up down below, that would help me out. That would help out the channel. I truly appreciate you all for being here. You're the best. I'll see you soon.